Hello, BookTube, and welcome to Sagalong. This is a BookTube event that I've taken part in now and for a couple of years, where me and a group of other great BookTubers, there's a long list of hosts that I will link down below, are examining the Icelandic sagas. And this time around, we're all examining the same saga in the first half of the month. So for the first 2 weeks, this week we're doing the first half of the Laxdaela saga, and then next week we'll do the second half of the same saga. In all the videos, you should go subscribe to all of these people if you don't already, but it's going to be a lot of fun to do. And then in the last 2 weeks of the month, we'll all be free to scatter to the winds and deal with whatever sagas that we want. So today we're doing the Laxdaela saga, which I have in an old Penguin classic translated by Magnus Magnusson, and it's a famous 13th century Icelandic saga that is mainly famous for its second half. So our challenge for this first half, for this first week, is how to talk about this thing in terms of what we're reading this week. And the key here is that it's not just that this saga is famous for. There's a character named Gudrun who's part of a love triangle in the second half of the saga. So, for instance, this Magnus Magnusson Penguin Mass Market is broken up into about 80 chapters, and Gudrun doesn't even appear until chapter 32 or 33. So you've got all of that at the beginning, most of what we're thinking and concentrating on this week, that doesn't involve her. And the reason why it's all in here, the 13th century audiences would have felt exactly the same. Outside of Scandinavia, 13th century audiences would have read this and thought, okay, well, the kicker of a story, the thing that makes you remember this, the amazing piece of dramatic pathos, the love triangle, and Gudrun herself as a character study, doesn't happen until late in the book. And so there would have been an element, even hundreds of years ago, of really concentrating on the second half, except for the author, the anonymous author of this saga, and all of the anonymous original readers and hearers, who would have understood that this is a particular kind of storytelling, it's a particular way of doing things. All that we're reading this week is the vast genealogical underpinning of the characters and the families and the family tensions and the situations that will inform the love triangle at the end. And to modern Western reading audiences, that is going to seem strange. Maybe not as strange as it could be, since there's a gospel that opens with a long genealogy. But this is more than genealogy. These are the stories of these people. We follow them up hill and dale, and traveling from island to island. We explore all the people that they knew, all of their fantastic Icelandic nicknames, the Peacock, or Un the Deep-Minded, a female character who I think commands the first chapters that we're reading, the chapters we're reading today. A powerful woman, and very much, I think, meant to be a narrative prototype for Gudrun later on. I think there are meant to be parallels there, but nevertheless, it's a little bit strange to a modern reading audience. It's the equivalent of if the Lord of the Rings, if every paperback copy of J.R.R. Tolkien's Lord of the Rings started with the Silmarillion. It's the equivalent of that. If you have the Lord of the Rings and you have the long expected party and Bilbo Baggins putting on a ring and turning invisible at his 111th birthday party and all that sort of stuff, but only after you've read 300 pages of the Silmarillion with all of the deep lore and history and all the family backgrounds of everything involved. And even in Lord of the Rings, Tolkien knew these Icelandic sagas backwards and forwards. He was steeped in them, absolutely steeped in them. And even in Lord of the Rings, my facetious example notwithstanding, you can still see it, because the Lord of the Rings starts off, it doesn't start off with the birthday party and the disappearing. It starts off with a little bit of deep lore. Mind-boggling to me. Understandable that a medievalist like Tolkien would start his book off that way, but mind-boggling that his editor or friends of his wouldn't say, okay, well, sure, when you're writing it yourself, yeah, but if you're going to put this out in front of the public, all that business about Hobbit agriculture has to go. It can go into an appendix, but you don't start off that way. Same thing is much more the case here. This is the template for that, because here we get all of the high passions and the adventures and the deep characters that presage that later story, and that I don't think are meant to be merely anticipatory. I think you're meant to enjoy them on their own. I certainly did, although Magnus Maggesson's translation, I really like it, but that actually makes me suspicious. I was reading this again for Sagalong, and I was thinking, this really reads like a 1950s novel. The dialogue, the interplay between the characters, it's just, my first reaction was, it's just terrific. Boy, I'm getting these great character synopses and these great action scenes and great dialogue, and I'm just caught up in it completely. And then I started thinking, wait a minute, part of the reason you're caught up in it completely is because it seems so immediately recognizable, and that wouldn't be the case. This if you're reading the first half of Laxdaela Saga and it doesn't seem at all strange, then maybe the translator is trying too hard to smooth out the edges. It should, I think, seem a little strange, I would assume. I don't think I have any other translations of this. Actually, I should have checked before I started this video. It's possible that the Laxdaela Saga in the big Penguin Classic Deluxe Edition, the Sagas of the Icelanders, is not by Magnus Maggessson. It's possible that's a different translation. In which case, I'll read that. I'll read the second half. I'll read that for the second half of Laxdaela Saga. I would gladly switch up translators. As much as I'm enjoying this, I'll finish this, and then I'll start halfway through, if it's different, in the Sagas of the Icelanders, a volume that I wish. I'm not going to get up and get it, but it's a beautiful Penguin Classic Deluxe Edition that quite a few of my fellow Sagalong compatriot berserkers are. Now, actually, Mark Richardson is the only one who looks like a berserker because he's growing the beard for the Make-A-Wish Foundation up there in Vermont. He's become a beardo. So you just put a Viking helmet on him, and there you go. Although, what would his funny pseudonym be? It wouldn't be the Peacock. And Richardson the Yankee is a little bit anachronistic. We'll come up with something. But a lot of my fellow Sagalong hosts are using that volume. That volume is amazing. So I will look at it and see if maybe it's got a different Laxdaela Saga. That would be fun. But I certainly didn't lack for fun in the first half of this read-along. Not at all. This is a gigantic, interlocking, intergenerational family saga. But it's never boring. The one main problem, if you don't, let's say you're going into this completely blind, you don't know about the Gudrun story, you don't know about the incredible love triangle that's coming up, and you're just wondering what this is from page to page, then you won't have to worry about that. The only other obstacle I think you would have as a reader who has no idea what this is that it is a purely family saga. So you don't know, there's no good way to put it, you don't know what's important to pay attention to. That's because all of it is. But the modern Western mind frame is, well, okay, so and-so did this, and then so-and-so married, and then so-and-so moved to the Faroe Islands, and then so-and-so died, and then their children did this. But okay, but how much of this should I be paying attention to? And the key is that you should be paying attention to all of it. But I think that in the composing eye of the person who originally wrote this down, a lot of the stuff that we're reading today gains extra resonance in hindsight. So I'm not sure how successful this would be to read if you didn't know that. If you didn't know, all these strands are going to go forward in time and lead to this amazing story, however tangentially, however distantly, then I don't know. I don't think that this was composed with any mind frame that you wouldn't know that story. I think that this, by the time this was written down, this was all end freighted in a way that, for instance, Homer's Iliad is as well. So that the person who writes it down can indulge in the foregrounding and know that they have your attention. That would explain, like, for instance, the catalog of the ships in the Iliad. where you're reading one thing after another, so and so's homeland, so and so's island, so and so's the size of so and so's farms and home and tributary domains and whatnot, and you're thinking, do I really need to know any of this? I'm never going to hear about these people again, or most of them are going to be dead. So, do I really need to do this? And I worry that something of the same impatience might strike the reader at the beginning of this story as well. If you're reading this for the first time for Sagalong, I would love to know what your reactions were to just one generation after another, one person after another. Did you find yourself latching on to outsized personalities, including Un's, the deep-minded, the Un of the deep thoughts, or were you a little bit impatient, a little bit annoyed, wondering, how much use is any of this going to be? It's the narrative isn't stopping to concentrate on any person, any place. So, what should I pay attention to? I'm wondering if you had that problem if you read this. I'd also love to know, for those of you who are partaking of Sagalong, how you're reading Laxdaela Saga. I've been keen eye in the videos as they pop up what my co-hosts are reading. I think a lot of them, like I said, are reading the Sagas of the Icelanders in the Penguin Classic Deluxe Edition. But what are you reading? Where did you encounter this story? I'm enjoying it, of course. I always love Sagalong. I still, scandalously, have not decided what my other two sagas will be. I'll have to figure that out today or this weekend. But I'm having a blast. I made sure for this read along, we're reading half of this book. I made sure to stop at chapter 40 in this Penguin Classic. So I'm not exceeding. I'm not going ahead. I don't want to get a bad name in read alongs. So I stopped at chapter 40 and had a wonderful time. Totally enjoyable. Not sure, again, like I said, I'm not sure how much of that is that I know what's coming. And therefore I like watching the resonances, the parallels and the echoes, the four echoes and whatnot. And how much of it was just that Magnuson just does such a great job turning this into a Norman MacLean adventure story. We'll see. I will check the other edition and see if I have a different translation of Laxdaela Saga. And if I do, maybe that'll spark all sorts of different reading impressions. This time along was pure fun. So that is the first week of Sagalong. You're going to see a lot of videos popping up in your feed from all of my fellow co-hosts. I will leave links to all of them down below. They're all wonderful channels, so feel free to subscribe if you haven't already. And we'll be back next week with the second half of Laxdaela Saga. So we're finishing up then, and by then I will be able to tell you none of the sagas are long, or except for Njala Saga, which I think Mark Richardson is doing. Somebody I think is doing it, not me. All of them are short, so I don't think you'll need much in the way of advance notice if you want to read along. By next week, by the time we finish Laxdaela Saga, I will know what I'm going to do for my next saga, so I will inform you then. And that is it. That is the first week of Sagalong 2020. What fun. So I'll wrap this up, but I'll be back. Thank you, BookTube.